just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to it. You're on a Monday. It's a Monday, and it's always about food, it seems like. So that's a Meatloaf Monday to you. Play it, man.
I think I'll try the meatloaf sandwich.
Do you know what that is?
Yes, meatloaf.
What is it? I'm only asking in case I have to describe it later to a doctor.
Look, it's nutritious.
It's not coming up on the...
delicious.
Made out of meat. Add ketchup if you want. I couldn't care less.
I don't know why that's funny to me, but it just is. Happy Meatloaf Monday. And that would be JP on the board. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm great on this Meatloaf Monday. How about you?
Outstanding. I am. I'm actually feeling pretty good. And it's a beautiful day outside. Had a gorgeous weekend this weekend, too.
We did.
Had to top off the Jeep at one point. Whoop, whoop. I mean, it was just, yes, it was that kind of weekend. So anyway, we got a great show laid on for you. No guests today on purpose. No guests because I got some stuff that's like a lot to unpack. We're going to talk about a variety of things, some of which are hot button items in the news right now as we speak. So that being said, I got a triple dipper, and it is filled with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper. 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, the private sector versus the public sector. I'll do this in my monologue here in a minute, but I'm going to tell you right now, when the government will get out of the way, we can actually get a lot done. Isn't that funny? The government does have purposes. It certainly does. And the government does provide essential services. But yes, the government can, oh, by the way, get like really in the way sometimes. So we'll talk about it. Public sector versus private sector. That's number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, did you see what happened this past weekend? Holy cow. I'm calling the second dipper just Roundup. That's what it was. I mean, we might even need to... I might even need to have the sound effect from the old TV show Roundup, or what it was called, where they're rolling, just rounding them up. But yeah, they had a massive roundup in Florida. They had a massive roundup in Colorado, and I hear there's more on tap. So we'll talk about that as number 2 on the Triple Dipper, illegal immigration Roundup. And then number 3, political theater. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's an extremely effective protest going on, in like, I don't know, everywhere or nowhere, or just Democrats lamenting. Yeah, that's what they got. Right now they got nothing but political theater. It's a kabuki theater. I mean, it is like, it's just bananas. Anyway, the end result of this is political theater is where we are. All right, let me jump on into the Rightside Way opening monologue, and I'll remind you guys that Stan McDonald, attorney at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, he's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law, and oh, by the way, he is the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way monologue. Some of y'all are telling us we got interference on the mics. We're working that out too, but I got to keep going because we got a clock running. So let me just jump on in to the Rightside Way monologue. So there's a lot of talk right now about the right sizing of government, about bringing big government into a place of greater efficiency, about making government leaner and more responsive and certainly more responsible. I mean, you got Doge on the march, you got cutting waste, you got exercising cancerous spending, you got, generally showing us how much government has enjoyed the benefits of our hard-earned tax dollars. Yeah, Doge, thank you very much. It's galling. At the same time, we're also watching with a bit of morbid fascination as the Trump tariffs are wrecking the globalist view of world commerce by forcing productivity back into the U.S. private sector on U.S. soil. At this point, those who want to make, sell, or buy U.S. goods have a distinct choice. They can offshore the jobs, outsource the productivity, and pay more and make less, or they can view this as an opportunity to invest in America and American workers and American ingenuity. And then there's the stories of government just flat out getting in the way, like Camping World, a major RV retailer who just shut down their operations in one North Carolina city because city officials refused to let them fly a large American flag. Go figure. Or Saks Fifth Avenue in San Francisco, which is shutting down its brick and mortar store, which has been in town for nearly 5 decades because city officials will not curb crime or violence around its doors. Look, whether it be your tax dollars wasted or production capabilities sent overseas or stifling regulations or soft on crime policies, the government has a unique skill set that is too often used to literally crush the private sector. And truthfully, the private sector of our economy is actually what keeps our government going, right? I mean, you would think that the leftists who want more of your time, energy, and money would realize the government is killing the goose that lays the golden eggs when it gets too much in the way of the private sector doing what the private sector does best. Having said all that, I got to tell you about some of the most epic examples of the private sector doing what it does best. I was reminded of a story this past weekend and had to go check it out just to make sure I had my details straight. Yeah, overcoming obstacles with private investment, with sweat equity, with true grit, and good old American know-how. Well, the story that I'm about to tell you, it dates back to the 1800s. It dates back to the time when the Alaskan gold rush was taking place. In 1896, gold was discovered in Bonanza Creek near Dawson, which is roughly 50 miles inside the Canadian Yukon Territory. But the best way to get there was through Alaska. Well, when gold was made known, thousands upon thousands of men and women saw riches in their dreams. They gave up everything to become known as stampeders. They stampeded into the wilderness to find gold. But the gold fields, they were in some of the most rugged terrain known to man, and the best way to get there, the only way to get there, was through a frozen man-killer called the Chilkoot Pass. The Chilkoot Trail was roughly 30 miles long. Stampeders, they stormed into Skagway Harbor in southeast Alaska and began making their way overland. The route was considered too treacherous for wagons. It was too tough for even horses and mules. In some places, when the snow melted, men had to crawl uphill on their hands and knees over talus rock and giant boulders. The Canadian government mandated that every man had to have at least 1,500 pounds of supplies to better guarantee they wouldn't die in the wilderness. Okay, well, that meant that the men had to make the trek back and forth multiple times to get the amount of goods they were supposed to have with them when they went into the gold fields. And the last part of that trek was a place called the Chilkoot Pass. It was roughly 1 mile high, of pitched climbing, while wearing 100 pounds of gear and supplies. And once you made it to the top, you still had to build your own boat and then be prepared to sail it up the high mountain Yukon River to the gold fields. This whole thing was not for the faint of heart. Gear and supplies and bodies littered the trail and can still be found to this day. But the private sector always finds a way, it seems, to increase their productivity. So one group of entrepreneurs decided they were going to cut stairs into the mountain pass. And they did. They cut over 1,500 steps in the snow and ice. And then, of course, they charged people to use them. And they made good money by not even going to the gold fields themselves. They called it the Golden Staircase. You can look it up. And a lot of men and supplies climbed those stairs, and the private sector made a lot of money off of it. But then there was another guy named A.J. Goddard from Seattle. Goddard heard that the gold rush required boats. Because, like I said, once you got your 1,500 pounds of supplies up through the mountain pass, you still had to get it all downriver again, and everyone was scratch building homemade boats and rafts to try and sail the waters. But A.J. Goddard, he was the ultimate entrepreneur. He saw a way that no one else saw. He ordered 2 small paddle wheel steamboats to be built and then disassembled. And he shipped all the parts, including the boilers, to Skagway. And he paid to have it all hauled up through the pass on men's backs in small pieces. Trip after trip, his 2 boats made it up in pieces, and workers spent weeks then reassembling them by hand. And they made it work. His 2 paddle wheelers plowed the waters back and forth, carrying men and supplies over mountain rapids and lakes. Goddard made good money. And 2 years later, he returned to Seattle and served in the state legislature. It's amazing what the private sector can do when the government gets out of the way. Well, conservative commentator Dennis Prager says the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen, and he's not wrong. You see, the founders of this country, they intended for a government to provide for the common defense, to establish the rule of law, to ensure that life, limb, and property were protected. But there are some things, though, that governments are designed for, yes, like fighting our nation's wars, establishing trade with foreign nations, protecting the vulnerable by means of police and fire departments, ensuring equal justice, enacting the laws through representative bodies of elected citizens. But I also believe, though, that the value of the private citizen, the private effort, is what makes this country so great. You see, when government is the first resort to take care of our basic daily needs, that's when bad things happen. More and more government means more and more regulation, stifling regulation. As government grows, it must justify its existence and prove to the world that life cannot exist without it, right? And for those who still try to produce, to thrive, to create, the government too often believes it must have more from you, while also creating more regulations to tell you how, when, and where you'll provide for the government so the government can give to those entitled individuals who've chosen the government as their first resort. Look, I don't want the U.S. to be a mediocre country. I don't. We should never desire to be a nation of low-level producers who reach out to government all the time for the next stimulus check, the next handout, the next excuse why they don't have to work. A nation where productivity is stymied by so many regulations that folks just give up trying. Where taxation becomes so onerous that people choose not to even try to produce just to avoid the government reaching in their wallets again. And in that vein, I don't want a government that is so big and so entitled with its own existence that the people that work in our government don't feel the need to justify their existence every day by answering a simple email. Only self-entitled bureaucrats would find things like that offensive, and they have apparently with DOJ. But really, if we get down to the point that people cannot exist without government, it's only going to be because we've forgotten that government actually cannot survive without the people. Then we are just like that proverbial self-licking ice cream cone, just existing for the never-ending loop of mediocrity, living off what the government gives us while in turn feeding an ever-growing government. The bottom line is this, y'all. Government should exist solely to ensure that liberty survives. Government should free up the private citizen to be able to build the better mousetrap, to set the parameters for national growth, to make options available, not mandates. Liberal progressives, they believe that American spirit is a myth, that government always knows best, that you exist for the benefit of government, not the other way around. Liberal progressives believe that government should always be the first resort when you face a personal hardship, not your family or your church or your community, and certainly not your own self-determination. Well, look, for the past few years, we've lived under more government regulation and interaction with our personal lives than perhaps ever in the history of our nation. But like so many of you listening, I'm a conservative, and I believe in limited government. Limited government that allows freedom of movement, one that sets the stage for success and then steps back and applauds when the private sector knocks another one out of the park. Look, I believe in the satisfaction that comes from enduring, from creating, from achieving, from trying, failing, trying again, and succeeding through effort, real effort, not big government entitlements or stifling regulations. So in reality, yeah, it's stories like the Chilkoot Pass, men who actually cut stairs into a mountainside. It's stories like Mr. Goddard, who actually built a boat, took the boat apart, hauled the boat up the hill on his back, and then put it back in the water and sailed people downriver to find gold. Look, if government wants to survive, then the private sector has to thrive. And y'all, it's amazing what can happen when government actually gets out of the way. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Yeah, we're gonna unpack this some more. I got some stuff on this. Our first dipper is going to be on the same topic: private sector versus public sector. But I'm telling you, y'all, if the government will get out of the way, the ingenuity of the average American will far and away exceed anything that government could have done for them. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, thanks to several of y'all who gave us the heads up that something sounded like scratchy or garbled in our initial beginning of the broadcast there. We've dialed in as best we can. As far as we know, it's actually not on our studio. It may be at one of the stations, but nonetheless, I hope that it is sounding silky smooth to you now. Text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it. A lot of stuff happening at Rightside right now. So the latest edition of two of our podcasts just came out. Last night we had the latest of Emily Jones, the Controversial Mom podcast came out. And then today...
I'm having to do mine tonight.
Oh, that's right. You're doing yours tonight. Okay,
Yep.
that's right. We were
jam-packed weekend. Yes,
we were detained last night.
yes.
We did. We had a bit of a family gathering. Y'all may know JP and I are in the same family, and yes. Oh, by the way, congratulations to Kat, one of our cousins, who just got engaged, and so we had big doings last night. That was quite the gathering too, by the way.
Quite the big doings.
Quite the big doings. Needed more food, though.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Anyway, text lines are open. Let me tell you before I go to the break, though, about Stan McDonald. So, yeah, attorney Stan McDonald is the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way monologue. Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law, and I know Stan personally. I can just tell you that he is a guy who has been not only able to advocate for his clients quite well for a number of years, but he has been in the trenches, like in the mix for a long time on the politics and the policies that right-side ruffians care about, because he's one of us. He's an OG ruffian. Look, Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions. He can stand up for you in any state, local, or federal court. And I like to say, if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So that being said, I'm going to tell you how to reach him. You ready? Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man, an attorney, and here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. Tell him you heard about it on Rightside, please. And here's the thing. No representation made. The quality of legal service be performed is greater than the quality of legal service before the lawyers. Oh, shoot.
That may be your best one yet.
You think?
Like a 9.8.
Oh,
I'll give that one.
shoot. I'm not sure what it takes to be perfect, but I know I'm getting close.
Inching closer.
Inching closer. Several text messages. David at Buc-ee's has lost track of his days. He said he thought it was Tuesday until we reminded him it was Meatloaf Monday. But he actually texted in first, said, for us today it's a thankful Tuesday. Oh, we'll call it a thankful Monday, David. He said, my wife was a little bruised and shaken up, but nobody was injured. Oh, wow. Oh, it's a car. Oh, wow. David, he sent us a picture of his wife's car. Looks like it's totaled. I'm glad she's okay, man. Blessings on you and blessings on her. So thank you for letting us know. You're part of the family, man. Stephen from Huntsville heard the monologue and just said amen and amen. Thank you, Stephen. Ron from Huntsville says, send that monologue to Trump. If I can get it to him, I will. More text messages. Dipper number 1 coming up. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Yeah. Goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border from there into Fort Benning. We now call it Fort Benning, Georgia. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. All right, we got plenty on tap for you. We're going to jump right on in. And by the way, a couple of y'all are still saying things like, where did the YouTube go? But sometimes our texter tells us things that people said way after the fact. So I think that's an old text. Mark from Red Bay, I believe, was asking about it.
Yeah, the YouTube is up and running per normal now. So if you want to check it out.
And we're also streaming, by the way, on a variety of platforms. You can find us on Facebook at Sinphil Williams. That's my account. You can find us on X on my personal account at Sinphil Williams again, or the Rightside Media account. You can find us on our website at rightsidemedia.org. You can find us on Rumble. You can find us on YouTube. Good Lord, we're everywhere. All I'm saying is tune in. In fact, I tell you what, if you're not watching the video, you might want to here in a minute, because I'm about to show you some pictures of the things I talked about in my monologue. I find them fascinating. It's like history. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and jump in on that. I'll tell you what, I got some text messages. I'll tell you what, let me do this. Let me get some text messages, and then I'll jump in on that. So give you guys time to get to the video stream if you want to. Go to the video stream. I'm going to show you pictures of the Chilkoot Pass, the Golden Staircase, and of the A.J. Goddard steamship or steamboat that was carried up the mountain. So let me do this first. Bruce from Springville says the battle cry for our private sector needs to be, quote, push the envelope. We'll be second to none. I agree with that. We actually had a sermon at church this past weekend. I go to Church of the Highlands, and the pastor's sermon was about how much more God intends. It was not a like get rich kind of sermon. It wasn't like that at all. He was talking about the blessings of the Lord do not stop, and that one of his lines was, "If we don't quit, we win." It's a great line. He said, I can hear my football coach yelling at me, but he said, but that's what God says. So hang on it. JT Lacey Springs says, overreach seems to continue to expand. Example, the $150 charge to hand me my vehicle tag. Yes, totally get it. Totally. Here's the other, the real ID is still bugging the crap out of me. Just saying. I'm still there.
Yeah.
I know. I'm still there.
I mean, it is quite annoying.
It is quite annoying. I mean,
although I had it on mine when I got it, I would be annoyed if I had to go redo it just for that.
I don't know. Something about the fact that I feel like I've proven myself to my government multiple times, and now I got to prove myself again to be allowed to travel inside my own country. Ticks me off. John from Huntsville says, Phil, fantastic monologue. Also, did you hear that Putin announced a 3-day ceasefire in Ukraine starting on May the 8th? By the way, JP, I know you will never say War Eagle, but can you give me a War Beagle? Just asking.
Not really. I mean, it's too close.
Dave from Capshaw sending us something. What's he got here? Oh, Babylon B has a headline. Joe Biden arrested for harboring 11 million illegal aliens. I did see that earlier. Babylon B. Who writes their stuff, man? It's priceless. TC from Priceville says, I think the reason the left does not care about the private sector or small businesses is because they don't need them. They figured out a long time ago they can just use the Federal Reserve to print all the money they want, and they can care less that the American taxpayers are on the hook to pay for it. Just my 2 cents. Well, I don't think you're too far off on some of them, TC. Now, of course, that doesn't negate the fact that one of the mantras you constantly hear is they need to pay their fair share, but they'll never say what fair is. It's just more. Fair is just more. Please, more. And then David from Huntsville says the left is often seen as being the more compassionate, but statistically, conservatives give more charity than those on the left. That's true, by the way. So conservatives also volunteer more, but it's not because the people on the left don't care as much. It's because a person on the left sees these things as primarily government's role to do. Perfectly said. He said, a person on the right believes it's in the individual, the neighbor, the church, the charities, or the community's responsibility to do things. Government is the least efficient way to provide help. Wow, you guys, I'm telling you, half this audience could just host this show for me. I swear, it's just true. Now, look, I'm going to run through. So, Dipper number one, and JP, I'll be calling up those photographs here momentarily. If you're watching on the live stream, I'm about to show you a couple of things that to me are just inspiring, and they're old photographs from 1898. But listen, there are times when government needs to quit sending business elsewhere and making it hard to be in business. There's times when government needs to realize that they can actually level a playing field as opposed to create the playing field. There's times when government doesn't even do its own job, which makes it hard for people to be in business. There's times when government forces an agenda to try to co-opt the market forces and get the agenda in front of the actual private sector. And then there's times when government overregulates to the point that the private sector is crushed or feels no need to be in business anymore. I'll talk about all those things in a minute, but let me do this. If you heard my monologue a moment ago, I talked about the gold rush of 1896 through 98-ish in Alaska. And y'all, when I say the Chilkoot Pass was rough, I could not even, I didn't have the time to do it justice in my monologue. But the Chilkoot Trail was anywhere between 28 and 30 miles on the average, and it was arduous, and it was so rough in some places that they just basically they stopped taking pack mules because in the end the animals were often destroyed. They'd break their legs, and things would happen to them. They wind up getting eaten. So they just decided basically it became a man's job to carry his gear or to pay somebody to pack it for him. There was no other way to do it. You couldn't drag it. You couldn't put it in a wagon. You couldn't haul it on mules. And then you get, after all of this, and there were stages, like you'd go to this certain place and you'd have a resting spot. And then there were stages after that, and you go to another place and a resting spot. And we're talking about not just like it's your turn on the trail, you might see somebody. We're talking about literally a line of people. It looks like, if you look at the pictures I'll show you in a minute, it looks like literally people going up an escalator at a department store. There's so many. And we're talking about 1,500 steps finally were cut by some entrepreneur into the side of what became known as the Chilkoot Pass. And the Chilkoot Pass at some places was at a 45-degree angle. And it went up for almost a mile. It raised, I want to say, like 2,500 feet during that mile. It was epic. And there were people whose entire effort to get to the gold fields failed right there on the Chilkoot Pass. But then they get to the top. And then they're in the high mountains, and the Yukon River is in the high mountains, and the Yukon River was what they had to sail to get down to Dawson, which were closer to Dawson where the actual gold fields were. And some entrepreneur, a guy named Goddard from Seattle, thought, you know what? I'll fix this. And he had 2 small steamboats made, the kind that had the stern wheel, the big paddle wheel on the back. And these weren't big. They're like the size, I want to say they were about 20 feet long when they were built and roughly about 10 feet wide. And they could haul like 10 men plus their gear. But he had the boats built, boilers and all, and then disassembled, and then shipped up to Skagway Port in Alaska, and then hauled bit by bit, board by board, boiler by boiler, up through the mountain passes, and then put them back together up on the high mountain lakes. And it worked. This entrepreneurship didn't just make those people a lot of money cutting steps or building boats. This entrepreneurship was literally what made the gold fields more efficient, and for that matter, safer. You got these pictures? Let's do this. Let's do the golden staircase picture first. If you're watching the YouTube right now, I'm putting a picture up on the screen. And when it comes up, I'll just tell you what you're seeing is, and I got a slight delay on the one that I'm watching on my screen, but when you see the picture, what you're looking at is a long line of men that if you saw the entire picture, what you would probably see is literally hundreds, maybe 1,000 men going just, back to back to back up the mountain pass. Is that picture up yet? I can't even see it on my screen yet, so I'm just talking to it. This picture, there it is. This picture, yeah, that one, okay, you got the right one. That's a great picture there. That was literally, that's probably 1,000 men walking one after the other up the golden staircase through the Chilkoot Pass. And you can see how steep it gets there at the end. You see that thing, man? Can you imagine? There were times it says that when the snow melted, that the people were actually having to go up the hill on their hands and knees because it was so steep. Unbelievable. And they're carrying, every time they went, they were carrying packs of 80 to 100 pounds or more. And then sometimes they paid these like Sherpa guides, kind of like, but they were Native Americans in the area to carry for them. But you had to have the money to do that. And you would get up there, and the Canadian government had a mandate, which was a good mandate, had a mandate that every man had to have at least 1,500 pounds of gear. And so what that meant was you were going to make this trip 15 times on the average, just to get your gear up. And they had a place up there called the scales where they would weigh it, and they would see what you were bringing. And then they would tell you that you did or did not have enough, and you would have a place where you could stow your gear until you got it all together, and then you had to find a way to get it forward from there. So there's the golden staircase. How crazy is that? And then show the next picture. The next picture is going to come up on the screen. This is, so A.B. Goddard.
Just one second, let me pull it up real quick.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm talking. Just, go do your thing, man. A guy named A.B. Goddard from Seattle. I'm fascinated by history, but this is a great story, too. It's entrepreneurship. It's private sector work at its best. A.B. Goddard was an entrepreneur in Seattle who heard about the gold rush, and his thought was not, hey, let me go get some gold. His thought was, I'm going to make a lot of money by helping the other people get gold. And so he took these two boats, he had them built, and he took them apart and literally packed them up into the mountains and put them back together. Y'all, that's on top of the 1,500 pounds he had to get up there. There it is. He named his first boat after himself. It's the A.B. Goddard. And you can see a picture of it on the screen right now. And the A.B. Goddard plied those waters. And listen, when it went up and down the rivers, sometimes it was calm water. Sometimes they had to shoot rapids. Other times it was going around shoals and sandbars and dodging ice flows. And it actually sank. The A.B. Goddard and its sister ship both sailed the waters for 2 to 3 years. The gold rush only lasted about 2 years. And when the A.B. Goddard sank in 1901, it was found in 2008. They actually found it with a lot of historical artifacts still on it. The boiler's still intact underwater, and it became an archaeological spot as they pulled it up. That's 1898 right there. Can you imagine what it took to carry that thing up the mountain? I mean, in pieces, but still.
That is true entrepreneurship right there, though, like you said.
It's crazy. That's America right there, man. I'm just telling you. That's America. All right. Listen, we're taking a break right now. We're going to come back, and in that theme, I'm going to dive right into private sector versus public sector. Yeah, I got a few more things to tell you. Things in the news, things you're going to want to know about this very thing. What happens when government just gets out of the way, please? Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. Chris from Gadsden checking in. He says that golden staircase is really just a picture of my grandparents walking to school.
Sounds like the stories they say.
Perfect. Except that it'll be uphill both ways.
Yes, nothing but uphill.
Andrew from Tony, Alabama says, I believe the man-made staircase you're talking about was depicted in the beginning of a few scenes of the movie White Fang from the 90s. It may have been. Yeah, it may sure enough been. John from Huntsville says, awesome picture, Phil. Thank you, John. And he says, the Rightside Radio History Channel is awesome. Proud to serve. Tony from Franklin, Tennessee says, that's amazing. Just found your live stream. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you. And thank you for being a part of the show. We're glad you're with us. Roy from Hartselle says, information on boat. What is he saying there? I don't understand what's happening. Does it mean like a whole lot of emojis and he says boat?
I guess he means the information was great.
Thanks. Ken from Harvest says, an example of government getting out of the way, cell phones. President Reagan deregulated the phone companies, paving the way for cell phones. You know what? Thank you, Ken. I've actually used this as an example before. Let's talk about this. The idea of government inflicting itself on a market with an agenda is a whole lot different than the government lifting itself out of the way so that the free market can do its thing. Point in fact is the electric vehicles. All right, so electric vehicles, do they work? Yeah. Electric vehicles, are they considered a part of the market now? Sure, they already were. Electric vehicles, are they what everybody wants? Nope. Are they as efficient? No, depending on what you mean by efficient. Electric vehicles, are there charging station infrastructures, everywhere for them? No. Okay. Here's the deal. The Biden administration did not understand the free market. The Biden administration thought it could force itself on the free market and thereby, using an agenda, climate change, decide that everybody needed to have a certain kind of vehicle. What if they had done that with cell phones back in the day? Wouldn't have worked, would it? What happened with cell phones was President Reagan deregulated the phone companies. Perfect point, Ken from Harvest. He deregulated the phone companies, but everybody didn't get a cell phone the next day. And certainly everybody didn't have a smartphone yet. Part of that was technology, but part of it was also the technology had not been developed. The better mousetrap had not yet been built. The market forces began to dictate advances in the technology. As supply and demand began to meet, then supply became the next level and the demand wanted an even greater level. And so people went from having a cell phone that had been deregulated that you carried around in a bag and you had to have a special antenna put on the back of your vehicle and you had to plug it in and then take it in your house so nobody would steal it. Well, then it went from that to this thing that you carried around, and it was about the size of a brick, but it was still kind of clunky, and you only had certain places in the world you can even use it. And then it went from there to this thing you had that you could flip open, even carry in your pocket, but you sort of had, a certain amount of data. If you remember this, people didn't want to make too many phone calls because you might use up your minutes. Remember that? And then it got to the point that coverage was pretty blanket, and then you began to do more. And the next thing you know, it went to like having a BlackBerry where you had a little screen you could type on. Holy cow, what is this? I can get emails on my phone. And then pretty soon they had the internet on your phone. And next thing you know, people are texting more than they're talking. And then after that, you got, wait, I can put the whole internet and do my social media and everything on my phone? Can you imagine not having a smartphone now? No. Did you get there overnight? No. But the government got out of the way and the private sector built what the public wanted. And they built it over time. The Biden administration did just the opposite. The Biden administration says, here's our plan. You're going to have an EV and you're going to like it. And then they mandated the construction of EVs through regulatory burdens and tax incentives and subsidies. And they tried to spend your tax dollars to build maybe a few electric chargers. And the market was never ready for this. It wasn't, because that's not the way the market works. When government decides to take its agenda and falsify the market will always self-correct. And if you look right now, there are entire car lots full of EVs that have not yet sold. There are companies that had been gearing up under the Biden administration because they were told they had to, that are now backing off because they don't have to anymore. You know why? Because they know they won't sell them. Why build them if you're not going to get subsidized? Why build them if you're not going to get subsidized and nobody will buy them? And oh, by the way, why build them if no one's going to buy them? And it also costs a lot more to build them. And Ford is losing money every time it builds an EV. Now, is there a way forward? Yeah. But you know what? We're just not quite there yet. So in the meantime, you just don't turn off the tap on combustion engines and pretend that oil and gas is no longer relevant. You can continue building the EV if you want to, and the world will wind up adopting your product when it is the best one, and that's what the free market wants. I just gave you literally between the electric phone, the smartphone and the EV, I just gave you free market 101. We're going to come back, and I got a few stories I'm going to tell you about things in the news right now that detail the private sector versus the public sector as examples. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, hour number 2, coming up.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number two. Hour number two on a Meatloaf Monday. Blessings upon your meatloaf dinners. All right, let me go to the phones real quick before I jump back into my topics. Chris from Athens on line one. Hey man, how are you?
Colonel Williams, love the show.
Thanks,
Hey,
man.
just real quick to your topic about the EV vehicles.
Yeah.
Aside from the issues they currently have,
Yeah.
they're not good in cold weather environments. Batteries don't charge worth a flip,
That's
and
never
at
good.
least around here and possibly other cities, you also don't have the adequate amount of chargers to charge EVs. So that also, in my opinion, is a hit to that market as well. And internal combustions have been around forever, and that's still the best
Yeah.
the best vehicle to
I agree,
have
man.
right now.
You know, they have a thing now. It's actually diagnosable. It's called range anxiety too. People get worried about taking a trip and not being able to keep their charge long enough to make the whole trip, the range they can go. And then you look at, we had what, $7.5 billion assigned to Pete Buttigieg to build infrastructure around the nation, and we got like a dozen charging stations, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I know who I work for. We have some at work. You know, there's at Walmart, and I had a friend of mine I used to work with that when he bought his Tesla, he got a large tax credit. But what's why get a huge tax credit if you can't go,
Yeah.
if you have to basically charge it at your house?
That's exactly right. Hey, good call, man. Thanks for hanging on the line. I appreciate you waiting during the break.
All right, I appreciate it. You have a good one.
You too, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, good call. And he's right. It's just the market wasn't ready. Let's just be honest. And they can't force it to be ready overnight. But let's talk about some other things within this whole public sector versus private sector thing. I got several examples for you to think about. Like, here's one. What about when government stops deciding, you know, our foreign policy would be better if we took some of these American jobs and we sent them overseas? Now, some of y'all sat up straight in your chair because you're like, yes. And others of you are thinking, yeah, but labor unions are going to make it cost more money. You know what I think will wind up happening? If more and more of our industrial base recenters itself back onto U.S. soil, I really do believe that at some point the labor unions will recognize that if they're not careful, it'll get sent offshore again, and if they keep trying to drive wages through the roof. But here's the bottom line. We want the jobs for Americans first anyway. American family businesses back Trump's tariff boost to domestic manufacturing. This is off the National Pulse. This is what happens, here's first example, when government quits sending its business offshore. A guy named Will Walker of a company called Walker Forge, they're a longtime family-owned business, and I think they're in Wisconsin. Yeah, they are. Says the tariffs are sending a clear message that companies cannot undercut our U.S. industrial base anymore. By the way, he's not union, he's management. He's the owner of the company. He's saying that. And you've got other companies, like in this same article, you've got one called Franchino Mold and Engineering, another one called Elwood. You've got a whole bunch of companies out there that are saying, we are so glad that people are finding their way back to the United States. Now, you may say, well, are we really? You know, well, here's an example. It's not always just the American manufacturers. Sometimes it's foreign manufacturers going, if our biggest market is going to be America, maybe we ought to build in America. So LifeSet, Dateline 2 days ago, LifeSet came out with an article that says telecom giant weighs expanding its U.S. manufacturing in light of Donald Trump's tariffs. All right, this is Nokia. Nokia, which is a Finnish, I thought Nokia was Japanese.
I kind of thought that too.
I never knew they were from Finland. I'm not sure why I would have known that, but nonetheless, I am somewhat taken aback.
I am too, actually.
Okay. A Finnish company, Nokia, announced it's considering expanding its U.S.-based manufacturing operations as a way to mitigate the effects of tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. The company projects that tariffs will impact its second quarter comparable operating profit by about $22 to $34 million. Okay, and their shares fell by 6% based on those projections. So what they're thinking about doing is relocating their manufacturing capability to increase capabilities at their 6 American-based plants. Win-win. We get more Nokia products. They get the ability to build locally and probably save on some shipping. At the same time, American jobs. Yeah. So yes, when government quits sending business offshore, we may actually win. How about this? What about when government doesn't do its job at all? I don't know if you heard Adam Schiff actually come clean. Oh, Lord, I can't believe I said that. Anyway, Adam Schiff told a story the other day in an interview that I would say this. He's been holding on to the story for a while because it was not a new story. In other words, it didn't fit the narrative until he was running for the U.S. Senate. But Adam Schiff told the story about how he had his car broken into when he was traveling to San Francisco. His luggage was stolen out of his car. Crime in San Francisco is through the roof, right? So he went to a Target to get some toiletries and things he needed for his hotel stay. And when he was there, he realized everything he needed was locked up behind plexiglass. And he had to ask for help, which was hard to find because no one was around the store, to come and help him get the stuff he needed out of the locked cases. When he finally got the stuff, he went to the counter and the lady said, well, do you want one of our cloth bags? And he said, yes, I do, because that's going to be my luggage now. And she said, yeah, those Democrats are blankety, blankety, blank. Here's Adam Schiff telling a story about what happened to him in San Francisco, and the store operator, the clerk at the store, was not enamored of Democrats not realizing who he was. Lots of fun in that story, to be honest. But what?
I was going to say, it's funny when the people who are responsible for the mess that they make have to actually go endure the mess that they made.
Yeah, no doubt.
And they're like, oh, well, this is awful.
Which was his point in telling it.
Yeah.
He said, we've got to make a change. Oh, where were you last year during the campaign season, Adam Schiff? You were too busy saying you had seen the evidence and it was real. Russia collusion was a thing. Well, as living proof of what Adam Schiff is telling us now, Saks Fifth Avenue, story here on Fox Business. Saks Fifth Avenue is shutting down its San Francisco location. This is one of their anchor stores, y'all. This is a longtime brick and mortar icon in downtown San Francisco. It's been there for 45 years. It's not closing because Amazon online sales got so big that they got run out of the brick and mortar business. Not at all. It's closing because they can no longer guarantee the safety of their employees. They're tired of being robbed, and they don't see any point. It got to the point that they had already tried doing, you can shop at Saks Fifth Avenue by appointment only. Can you imagine? You got to call Saks and say, I'd like to come at 10 a.m. and, sir, what department do you want to go to? Men's? Well, sir, you'll have to be escorted. I mean, they were doing appointment only, and they've decided it's not even worth it. So they're shutting down and abandoning their downtown location in San Francisco. Bloomingdale's is closing in the same general area later this spring. You've got Walgreens, Denny's, and Michael Kors have already shuttered their San Francisco locations. So far in 2025, San Francisco police have recorded more than 8,100 crime reports, including 530 robberies and 4,600 instances of larceny theft. So the end result is, if government will stop sending business offshore, we might get more jobs. If government will do its job, like, I don't know, enforce crime, you might actually preserve business. I've already talked ad nauseum about what happens when government forces its agenda, but I had a whole article on that, EV chargers, I've already got it. But then there's this. Then there's hyper-regulation. Then there's government that decides it knows best, and it's going to hyper-regulate to the point that businesses go, screw this, and I'm out of here. And that's happening. And sometimes it's, massive OSHA regulations or licensing requirements or, fees and fines. And other times, it's just literally big government going, because we're the government, that's why. Like, how about this? Camping World. I love this guy, Marcus Lemonis, who is the owner of Camping World. He's an immigrant. His family came here from Beirut, Lebanon when he was a kid. And he has been living, in his own words, he's been living the American dream. He loves this country, and every single Camping World facility, and there's 200 of them around the nation, they sell RVs. They fly a giant American flag. Like a giant, the flag itself is the size of a basketball court. That's how big it is. Can you imagine? Size of a basketball court.
That's pretty massive.
On a 130-foot tall pole. And that's, as sure as they do anything else on their designs for their facilities, they always have that 130-foot pole and their 3,200 square foot American flag. And Greenville, North Carolina said that flag is too big. We want it taken down. And he said it's not going to happen. They started hitting him with $15,000 a day fines. $15,000 a day fines.
Over a flag.
Over a flag. Which, by the way, it's the flag of our nation. Yes, it's also just looks cool. And next thing is, how many people want to buy an RV and also would go to the place that stands for America? They won't do it. The Greenville city officials finally said, no, we're not. You change that flag, you take that flag down. And he finally said, you know what, screw you. And he shut the whole place down and left. Just shut it down and left. A place where he had obviously assessed was worthy of one of his outlets. He finally decided, I ain't doing it anymore. I'm not fighting your hyper-regulation. So yes, here's the other example. If government will get out of the way with over-regulation, then, oh, by the way, you might keep some businesses.
Well, good on him for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that takes some brass.
Also, I will say, you're talking earlier about Adam Schiff and realizing how unsafe San Francisco is.
Yeah.
But it's funny, though, because how easy it can be fixed. We saw Newsom clean up the streets when Xi Jinping came to town. So it's like,
yeah, that's right.
If they had the same, get-to-itness of, there's a foreign dictator coming, and what if they had that much care about their own citizens and constituents to clean up the streets and make it safer?
Yeah.
But how fastly it got done shows how easy it is to fix. They just don't want to.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, listen, that's it for that one. Private sector versus public sector. That actually took longer than I thought it would, but I think it's because I had to just talk about the Chilkoot Pass for a while.
I mean, that was a pretty cool story.
That was history. All right, we're taking a break. We're coming right back. Next one, you're going to want to hear this, you guys. Roundup. Have you seen the stories of what happened in Florida, in Colorado? And I think there's more coming. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades in here. All right, so going into Dipper number dos. All right, number 2 for Meatloaf Monday. I'm calling it Roundup. I don't know if you guys saw the news, but y'all, what just happened this past weekend with regards to illegal immigration roundups is some serious next level stuff. So we had 2 instances that I'm going to be describing for you in great detail in a few minutes. One in Florida. In fact, one was Florida, and the other in Colorado. But I gotta lay some foundation here for a little bit. Like, for instance, let's just talk about illegal immigration for a minute, shall we? Because it's not like this is the kind of thing that can be ignored unless you're a liberal. It's not like this kind of thing that you can't say, well, it's only impacting the masses. Remember what happened the other day with, you may have seen this, JP, what happened the other day with Kristi Noem, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem got her purse stolen at a restaurant?
Yeah.
Did you see the news about how they found the guy, or they
I know they did find him. I didn't hear the whole story, though.
He's an illegal alien?
Oh, go figure.
It says that he apparently had no idea who she was when he stole her purse. This has apparently happened more than once in restaurants around that area. He walks by the table. He sees the purse. He targets it. He drags it away with his foot, he catches the strap with his foot, drags it away, and then throws a coat over it real quick, and then runs out of the restaurant. That's what he did with hers. They got it on video. They saw him do it. His name is Mario Bustamante Leyva of Santiago. He's 49 years old. Was arrested. He was at an Easter outing. She was at an Easter outing with her family at the place called the Capitol Burger. Bustamante Leyva is in the U.S. illegally and is believed to be part of a large East Coast robbery organization that does this throughout restaurants and other other haunts of people that carry expensive purses. Anyway, the bottom line is illegal immigration. Even the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security is the victim of crime by an illegal immigrant. I mean, come on.
Not very smart to
No.
do that to that person, especially.
No. I mean, you
Probably
look
the
at
worst person he could have done it to.
You look at it and think, wow, you really didn't plan that out very well.
Mm-hmm.
But and then you've got things happening in the law or not in the law, if you will, regarding judges. Let's talk about some judges for a minute, shall we? So I don't know if you saw it or not, but a judge in Wisconsin named Hannah Dugan, we talked about her briefly last week. Judge Dugan is a knucklehead. Judge Dugan has completely lost sight of the idea that she's supposed to be apolitical and, oh, by the way, finding her way to the law with objectivity. So Judge Dugan has been arrested. The left is up in arms, but they really can't argue much. If you notice, the fight has been a little bit tepid. So Judge Dugan was in her courtroom. She had an illegal immigrant in front of her who was there basically to stand trial for additional crimes. ICE showed up. ICE showed up with a request to take him into federal custody. She was having none of it. She got mad at ICE and sent them down the hall to go see the presiding circuit court judge. They went out. She told them to wait in the lobby, which is where ICE was planning on detaining him because they had preemptive authority over the state court that she presided over. Except that she snuck him out the back door. Every courtroom has a means of access for the jury, right? You usually have a jury door. And she snuck that illegal alien and his attorney out through the back of her courtroom. She helped with this. She said, "Come with me," and she took them and she locked them in the jury room so that the ICE guys couldn't get her or get him. And I look at this thing. What was she? Did she think she was going to get away with this? I mean, it's not hard, but now you've got Mexican national Eduardo Flores Ruiz, who is now also, oh by the way, back in custody, and oh by the way, so is Judge Dugan. But just to go ahead and make it more fun, you've got another judge in Wisconsin who's just mad. She's mad that her friend got arrested. Judge Monica Isham made the announcement in an email to judges across the state She says, guidance is now requested or I will refuse to hold court. Basically, what she's saying is, I'm boycotting my, job. She's a judge. Y'all, the illegal immigration thing is rampant. But what I'm loving is the Trump administration has not even slowed down one bit. Phil Williams, tell you more about it when we get back. Y'all stay tuned. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. Goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains that we call Auburn, straight across the border from there to what we now get to call once again Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. All right, I'm in number 2 of the Triple Dipper. I'm calling it Roundup. Yeah, it is. Roundup. That's exactly right. Where are we right now with illegal immigration? Well, we're right now at a place where known gotaways under Donald Trump have dropped 96%. 96%. Let that sink in. There's an article on Fox today. I didn't pull it because it just came out like right before I came on the air. But the White House had a press conference today, and they had Tom Homan. I love Tom Homan. They had Tom Homan come in and speak for a few minutes to the press. And he said that he basically has worked for every president in the Customs and Border Patrol. He has worked for every president since Reagan. And that he is, in every case, he said, every president I've worked for the most part, did what they could to secure the border. He doesn't really have any beef with Obama. It wasn't as strong as he would have liked, but you know, he doesn't have any beef with certainly with Clinton, and then Bush, and then of course both Bushes, and then you've got Reagan. He said, in his words, he said, "We're in the process of carrying out the largest deportation campaign in American history. After 4 years of being vilified by the Biden-Harris administration, our heroic ICE officers can finally do their jobs." And he also said that in all of his time of working for every president, he said, "I have never been with a president like we had with Biden." He said, "The first president in the history of this nation who came into office and unsecured the border on purpose." They're not playing. They're not saying a difference in policies. They're flat out saying, "I've been here. I've seen what every president does. There is no way in the world you can tell me that our border was treated the way it was without it being intentional." He says, "We now have 96% less people coming across the border." He said, "With that being said, that means how many women are not being sexually assaulted by cartels? How many children are not dying making that journey? How many women and children aren't being sex trafficked in this country? How many known and suspected terrorists are not making it to our nation? Or how many pounds of fentanyl are not getting into the country to kill young Americans?" What a great point. And I don't know if you saw it or not this morning. I posted it on my social media. This is like, talk about epic trolling. So as the press enters the White House for their daily affairs in the press pool, they have to walk up this, this driveway area into the White House. And this morning, the driveway was lined on both sides by over 100, picture like a real estate sign you put in your yard. 100 signs with the mugshots of illegal alien criminals that have been arrested for deportation.
And their crimes on the bottom.
And their crimes. Yeah, it says exactly what they did. It says arrested, has their mugshot, and who they are and what they did.
Well, even worse,
100.
Did you see what MSNBC did in regards to this?
No.
When they told the story of it, they blurred out the pictures of the mugshots on the signs.
Goodness. Because that's sensitive information, and they have rights too. They're mugshots.
Unreal.
That's
imagine if this was the Biden administration and those were J6,
Oh
signs.
yeah.
They would be, every single sign would get its own picture to be put up. But nope, it's illegal aliens who committed heinous crimes and they got to blur them out. It's insane.
It's absolutely nuts. All right. Having said all that, having laid the foundation, you got liberal judges freaking out and getting arrested. Other liberal judges freaking out, refusing to hold court. You got things that are happening left and right that says that it's actually improving on the border. I will say this. I believe this. I believe this is exactly what we voted for. I don't know about you. This is what I voted for. I voted for the idea of doing mass deportations. I voted for the idea of putting Tren de Aragua and drug cartels in their place. Last year, I'm on the record on this show multiple times saying, I'm going to be happy if they put a Tomahawk cruise missile in the middle of a drug lab in Mexico. I'll be fine with that because they're killing Americans at record rates. What we're also seeing, by the way, is a major new level of collaborative effort between local, state, and federal where they're allowed to. Key point, where they're allowed to. I've got a story here from 1819 News. Let me bring it home for us. 1819 News, 3 Alabama sheriffs have now signed up for federal immigration enforcement programs after Trump's second term began. So Elmore County Sheriff Bill Franklin, Franklin County Sheriff Shannon Oliver, Henry County Sheriff Eric Blankenship, they all signed up for an ICE program in March. What that basically is the ICE 287G program. I'm going to tell you why that's important in a minute. The ICE 287G program is where local officials, local law enforcement, is able to sign up to basically be deputized to work collaboratively with federal government on enforcement of immigration laws. So I think it was passed in 1996. Yeah. The 287G is basically, like I said, a deputization, and we now have 3 counties in Alabama that have already said, we're in. I'll tell you right now, the county that I live in, Etowah County, has gone one step further. We have a jail in Etowah County that is renowned for, it was built for ICE. It's a huge facility, 7-story tall jail facility in the middle of downtown Gadsden. The bulk of that was built for ICE prisoners. We had an ICE contract for years here. Under the Biden administration, the ICE contract went away. The ICE contract is back. And I'm hoping what that means is good things. Etowah County Sheriff's Office signed up for the jail enforcement model just, a year or so ago. They saw it coming. And we needed it. Now, in all of this, with local, state, and federal collaboratively working where they can, is it paying off? Well, let me just tell you. We had some things happen in the last couple of days that are just wow. First one you had was in Florida. I hold here in my calloused former paratrooper hands an article from Newsmax that came out yesterday. Operation Tidal Wave nets 800 Florida illegals in the first effort of its kind. 800. So listen, as a state senator, I used to occasionally go on drug roundups and serving warrants with my local drug task force. Just something I felt like I wanted to be able to do, to see what they went through and to go out there with them. And the task force would meet and we'd have interagency operation. You'd have different police forces would send in several more of their guys from each, community. And we'd go serving warrants, starting at like 4 a.m, knocking on doors, sometimes kicking in doors. It was a hoot. And they would serve warrants. Sometimes they'd arrest and detain. Sometimes they would just serve the warrant and tell them to appear. Other times they would find a dry hole. But the reality is that was at a local level. And that local level, we still had lots of collaborative work. We still had lots of effort put together. We still had lots of safety briefings. We still had lots of, where are they now? Here's the mapping. You take this sector. You take this sector. Here's your 5 warrants. Here's your 6 warrants. And then we'd all go out and, in teams to different locations. I cannot imagine what it took to do what Operation Tidal Wave just did. So 4 days straight, ICE, working in conjunction with Florida's local law enforcement in a first-of-a-kind arrangement, arrested 800 illegal aliens. ICE Director Todd Lyons said the main reason why the operation was significant, because it's the first of its kind, is because it's basically a surging of federal partners with Homeland Security and with the 287G partners in the state of Florida. So just like what you saw with those 287G partnerships in Alabama, Florida really went in it and had a bunch of counties that all jumped in and said, we'll do it. State troopers, local police officers, county sheriffs, they're our eyes and ears, said ICE Director Lyons. He said they've encountered these criminal aliens out and about during their regular duties and are able to go ahead now and identify those public safety threats for us. Among the 800, they also netted a convicted Colombian murderer, an alleged foreign gang member, or multiple alleged foreign gang members, including MS-13, and one Russian national named Sava Klishevsky, who reportedly has an Interpol red notice for vehicular manslaughter. 800. Y'all, this is huge.
Whenever I hear those numbers, like they got 800 of these, that has to mean that they've known where they are for quite some time.
Thank you. That was my next point.
Mm-hmm. And they obviously weren't allowed to do anything about it in the Biden administration because they got to get to that point.
when I get back from the next break, I'll tell you about the ones that they had to have known about for quite a while. In fact, we know they did. But this one right here, this one, just think about the scale of this. We would go out in a local county and serve warrants on roughly 50. They served no telling how many and arrested 800 on a statewide multi-agency, local and federal operation. Y'all, that's a whole new day. State of Florida is now a safer place, and illegal aliens are probably flooding out of Florida in droves right now. All right, take me to a break, brother. I'm going to come right back from this break, and I'm going to tell you in that same vein what has happened in Colorado, and I've got the actual commentary from the DEA agent who was on the scene. Y'all, this is what we voted for. I'm telling you. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right, so I'm going to jump into the next part of this discussion about the roundup, right? So I just told you about Operation Tidal Wave. That was the name of it. Operation Tidal Wave swept across Florida and arrested 800 illegal aliens in one exercise. I mean, well, the name was perfect, Operation Tidal Wave. So, and by the way, yes, that is what we voted for. Yes, that is what we voted for. I'm going to jump into this next one in Colorado. Before I do that, though, I got somebody that hung on during the break. I believe they're on topic, so let me just see what they got. Mike from Harvest. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Senator Williams. And yourself, sir?
I'm good, man. What can I do for you?
Well, I would hope that you would be talking about the very bad day a bunch of first sergeants and captains are going to had today when they arrested something around 10 U.S. soldiers there who were working at that party.
I'm actually
that you're about to talk about.
That's where I'm going next. I haven't had a chance to even open up that topic yet, but yes, that's going to be an interesting dynamic in the whole thing.
Like I said, there were probably some very long faces that were about to discover what military justice is about. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that, man. I would. Stand by. I'll be talking about it here momentarily, okay?
Thank you very much, Senator Williams. You have a wonderful day, sir.
Thanks, Mike. You too. Appreciate you. So let's unpack what happened in Colorado. How much time do I have? Do I have time? I do.
About 5 minutes.
Yeah, good. Let's see what I can get done before we go to the top of the hour break. And I have to carry it over a little bit, I will. But you've got Operation Tidal Wave in Florida. At the same time, I mean, because they can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? You've got ICE and DEA out in Colorado. In Colorado Springs, we have a Colorado Springs, by the way, very close to Fort Carson, also the home of the Air Force Academy. So Colorado Springs, in what is called a underground or illegal nightclub, more than 100 illegal immigrants were detained in a massive raid at this underground club, a club frequented by Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gang members, a club that when they got in there, the DEA says they had a multi-agency operation, arrested 114 illegals. The venue had, so the venue had a little more than 200 people. That means that over half of them were illegal. Think about it. Authorities there uncovered drugs, including what's being called pink cocaine. I'm not sure why it's pink cocaine, but the bottom line is some special kind of cocaine, as well as evidence of prostitution, multiple firearms. They've taken 100 illegal aliens into custody. Here's the thing. We had a report earlier today that says that the Department of Justice said they have been able to determine there were several hundred 911 calls about this nightclub during the Biden administration, and nothing was done about it. Nada. Not a thing. So they shut it down. Big raid last night. Drug dealers, murderers, other violent criminals, all shapes and sizes. And judges don't want to send them back to where they came from, Trump wrote. Well, that's true. But Attorney General Pam Bondi applauded the operation, which included 300 officials from multiple agencies, including the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and others. The interesting dynamic that our caller just talked about a moment ago was that apparently there were at least 10 active duty service members who were in the room or in the scene at time. A number of them were actually, a few were patrons apparently, and a number of them were actually paid security for this nightclub. So you got and by the way, it's not uncommon to find a guy delivering pizza in his off hours, driving for Uber on the weekends when he's on pass. That happens. But you don't usually see them working in places frequented by, drugs, illegal aliens, criminals, Tren de Aragua, MS-13, and being paid probably cash under the door with impunity. So I guarantee you, in the words of Mike from Harvest a moment ago, there's some first sergeants with some very long faces because they're doing some serious wall-to-wall counseling today. And there's some UCMJ coming down on some people for working in that club. That being said, I got an audio clip. Do I have time to play it? I got time. This is the senior DEA agent on the scene in the aftermath of the raid. Hear his comments. Go ahead.
Jonathan, give us some perspective here. 300 law enforcement officers. What brought about this kind of requirement, this kind of need to be here with that show of force?
So this is an underground illegal nightclub, okay? And what was happening inside was significant drug trafficking, prostitution, crimes of violence. We seized a number of guns in there. We had active duty service members who were running security at the club and involved in some of these crimes. And in fact, we had over 100 illegal aliens inside as well, and those over 100 illegal aliens were taken into custody by ICE.
Active duty service members helping as security here. Can you elaborate on that at all?
So it's an ongoing investigation, but we had over a dozen active duty service members in the club tonight, either as patrons or working as armed security.
Jonathan.
Wow. All right, so this has got multiple legs in the story. I think one of the most important pieces is that this is a major multi-agency operation. In basically within one 24-hour period, the Biden administration in just Florida and this one place in Colorado detained over 900 illegal aliens, many of whom were criminals. That's mind-blowing when you stop and think about it. Now, that's not even scratching the surface of the 11 million plus that are believed to be, had run across the borders and into the United States just in the last few years of the Biden administration. But what we're seeing, though, is that there is a concerted effort. The court decisions, and here's what I would say to this. Take heart, because these court decisions that are jamming things up are not stopping the Trump administration from continuing to do what it needs to do. That's an important thing for you to think about, that you are not watching the Trump administration sit back and go, well, we tried. We're just never going to get there because they're just being mean and they're holding us back. No, that's not happening. In fact, if anything, they stepped up their game. And liberals are having to play catch up right now because they can't even begin to keep up with the level of work this has never happened before, ever. Operation Tidal Wave, 800 of them arrested in one fell swoop. And then Tren de Aragua MS-13 gang members just living the life in their big underground, nightclub in Colorado Springs, being guarded by several members of active duty military. 114 of them taken into custody in one night. Y'all, it's a whole new day, and the illegal alien world is on notice. I got a little more on this when we get back. Text me, call me, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, I'm going to put a lid on this topic about the roundup here in a minute by going back to the question of those judges. But before I do that, let me go to the guy who judges things on a regular basis. Jeff Rowe from Indiana is already on the phone. Hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Well, so far I'm doing wonderful. I'm coming into the suburbs, heading north through Nashville.
So you're on the north side? On the north side subs?
I'm on the south side. I'm on the south side.
Okay. All
Hopefully
right.
by the end of the program, I'll be on the north side.
Hopefully so, man. Well, what's on your mind? What do you think about all this stuff?
Well, speaking of these judges,
yeah.
What I want to know is how much corruption is there in this? Because you got this one female judge that this guy was in court and was in front of the victims and everything. So apparently she didn't charge him with anything.
Yeah.
And being an illegal alien, I would think that would be a flight risk. You would want to hold him, So apparently he was let off scot-free because she likes illegal aliens, apparently.
Well, there's a story that broke just in the last, I'm looking at it right now. It broke in the last, 45 minutes that says that someone posted a picture. That same judge had a sign on the door of her courtroom that said, if anyone feels unsafe by coming to this courtroom, interpret that as you will, unsafe by coming to this courtroom, you can request to have your hearing done by Zoom. Meaning that way you could avoid having to be here physically and not have to worry about whether ICE is going to show up.
Wow, that's pretty nice, especially if you're going to get charged and put in jail immediately. Where are you at on this Zoom call, huh?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And it's a clear indication this judge was thinking that she was above the law, she would take matters into her own hands, and she had a predisposition that you're not supposed to have when you sit on the bench.
Right. And then we got the other judge that was, what was he, harboring Trinidad Ragua?
Oh, yeah.
Or,
yeah, that judge down in Arizona?
Yeah, so he's in there and everything. And I think, was he a federal judge, I think? Or
No, he was a local state judge, I believe. And he had a Trinidad Ragua guy living in his pool house. And they were big buds.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm wondering is did the cartels paying this guy off?
Who knows?
And you don't just harbor somebody like that just out of the blue. Hey, buddy, I'm this judge and everything, and I know you're a criminal. Just come on, and live with me. So that don't make sense either.
No, it really doesn't.
I'm thinking this. What I would like to see is I'll go back through the records and see a lot of these judges and see how lenient they are, or basically evading the law, statutory laws that are doing for these illegals that they wouldn't do for a normal citizen.
Yeah, here's the bottom line: if you're a judge, you're in the absence of a jury, you are the arbiter of both the facts and the law, and I get that, and I completely respect the bench. I'm an attorney, I do, but they also have to approach it without putting any of their preconceived notions or predispositions or premeditated thoughts on this thing. Just literally, you've got to be objective. Otherwise, you're doing what the law calls abusing your discretion, and that will get you thrown off the bench.
Well, that sounds good, but apparently they're not throwing very many of them off the bench. That's the trouble, and that's my one number gripe is
just one.
You've got these. Well, this is the biggest one, is you've got these judges and everything that's doing these corrupt things and everything. But for the judges that are sitting on the bench right now, it's mostly silence. And if you don't speak up against the bad ones, to me, you are just as guilty as they are. Just like if a policeman, sees a bad cop do something bad, and you're the good cop and you do nothing about it, the blame on you. And that's the way I see these things.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. On the one hand, I will say this though: judges are actually supposed to remain quiet about stuff. They're supposed to by law, because otherwise it could be seen as something that could get them to be required to recuse later because they made a statement of any kind. So basically, if a judge gets out there right now, and here's the weird part of it: if a judge gets out there right now and says, "I want Judge Dugan put back on the bench because I like illegal aliens," that judge can never try a case now of anything to do with someone who is an illegal alien, because they're seen as having some sort of or if for that matter, what the judge comes out and goes, "I don't think that judge was in her right mind, and I wish she'd never done that because they're here illegally and that shouldn't happen." Well, then that judge still can't try a case. So what really has to happen is judges need to shut up and do their job. Just shut up and do their job. Like, you have one job.
But that's the trouble. They don't. Just like now, apparently that doesn't apply to lawyers, because I know you'll call out a rogue lawyer in a heartbeat.
Well, see, we're supposed
and you're
to.
a lawyer.
We're supposed
just like
to. But
that's good.
The judge is supposed to be the one with the blindfold on. In other words, if the judge had to see, had to hear the whole case without being able to see it, they would still be able to decide the law, because the law is still the law. But it's a mess. But this Judge Dugan, she obviously was not fit for the office. There's no way in the world she can justify what she did.
How do we rectify that? How do we judge our judges if they, you can't speak out against them, and
oh no, you can speak out against them. You can.
Well, another judges. I say the other judges can't, but it doesn't do me no good to speak out against them, because I don't have the power to take them off the bench.
You do. And here's the thing: it depends on the situation. If it's a federal district court judge, then certainly it's harder, because they've been appointed as opposed to elected. If they're elected, you've got to find good lawyers, people who are of knowledge and capability to run against them. You just got to. And then you're still going to wind up dealing with, is it a blue or a red area? Can you get somebody in the office who's going to do a good job? So a lot of judges are elected. Yeah. There's that. The other piece of this is every state has what's known as, some version of, Alabama calls it a JIC, a Judicial Inquiry Commission. And that's the actual, basically that's the accountability group for judges. That you basically have to, it's like a tribunal. You have to go stand before them if you are accused of abusing your position as a judge. And somebody needs to start making these reports and making it happen.
Yeah, that tribunal should be wore out by now if they was doing their job.
Yeah,
That would be my guess. But it's just the way things are right now. But you talk about the election throwing judges off the bench. That'd be like trying to get rid of AOC in New York. She's going to have Chucky Schumer's job before long. So you can't. You can't. Stupid people do stupid things, and as long as stupid people are around, she'll be around, and so will these bad judges.
Listen, I had a situation. I'll just go ahead and say this. And I won't say what county. I'll just kind of leave it. But he's not on the bench anymore. I mean, we had a judge in my home county, where I both practiced law and I was a state senator, right? And when I got elected to the state senate, I had tried cases in front of this judge. Everything was fine. But when I got elected, this guy was a partisan Democrat, and he wrote letters to me on his official judicial letterhead telling me what ridiculous things we were doing as Republicans in Montgomery, and we were invading the province of sanity and all these things. It got so bad I had to open a file in my office to keep the letters because I knew that if I ever got assigned a case in his courtroom, I'd have to immediately ask him to recuse. But it finally got so bad that I called the actual presiding circuit court judge, and I said, I'm going to make you aware of something you might not be aware of. And I said, and it needs to stop, because my clients need to know that if I get a case in his courtroom, they're going to get a fair shake. Believe it or not, I quit getting any cases from that judge, and I was glad. But I thought I was going to have to report him, but he was literally violating the tenets of what he was supposed to be doing as a judge by being partisan and making it known in his official capacity.
Is he still on the bench?
He is not. He got voted out.
Well,
ha!
That's a miracle.
There's a
yeah, but this is Alabama.
No, man, that was a blue county. When I was the
Oh.
Republican chairman here in Etowah County, we flipped the entire county red. I was proud to be the chairman to watch it all happen, and we had great candidates, but we put people up in the right offices. And we had a guy, he came and sat in my office and he said, I'm thinking about running. I said, you should. And he did, and he's now the judge, and he's a Republican. So
Oh, that's good.
I got to go, brother.
That
Be
is
safe
good.
on the road, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, all right?
Have you a good one, Phil.
All right,
Thank
buddy.
you.
See you. Bye. All right, let's take a break there. We'll come right back. I'm going to put a lid on this one and take some text messages. And then we got one more dipper for the day. And it's a hoot, man. It's an absolute hoot. Political kabuki theater. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. Giving you all the truth you can put on a bumper sticker. Pulling pins on truth grenades. That's where we are. That's right. Bulletproof influence. What else have I got?
I think that's all of them for now.
That's most of them. Truth bombs. We're dropping truth bombs. And making common sense like a superpower. Okay.
There you go. I think we got them now.
I think we covered them all. All the bumper sticker slogans. All right. So several more of our text line friends. John from Lexington, South Carolina says, I can't wait to read the post-IG write-ups on those military members performing security at the club. You would think that it was known and off limits. Yeah. You'd love to believe. They call it underground. So it's like, I don't know how they name it. I don't know. I have no idea, man. But if they find out that this was a known site, and what he's referring to there, by the way, is almost every military installation will have off-limits locales for off-duty hours. And they'll tell troops, you will not go to this club. You will not go to that place. You will not spend time on this street. And so these, and I've even seen like the blacklist, if you will, posted over the urinals in the bathrooms, in the latrines. So you can't miss it. It's right there. Don't do it. And then what that sometimes does is it make the troops want to go there more.
Exactly. There's probably some of them that it probably empowered them, but
this is a little different. They're being paid to work there.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what they're being paid with,
Exactly. And hopefully
cash under the table.
They weren't taking part in any of the legal activities. I mean, we don't know yet, but it's like that's over a dozen military members. That's a good bit, I would say.
It's going to be something to watch. Roxanne from Harvest says, one way that ICE is finding the illegals by the phones the Biden administration gave them. I hope that's true. Just, that would be less poetic. Brian from Huntsville says, suggest a drive to get the judges disbarred for conduct unbecoming. Forget impeachment. Disbarment probably bears the larger scarlet letter and possibly easier to come by in the long run. Could work. I don't know now they're state judges, so each state's going to have its criteria, its means, its methods. So I don't know. But you know what? Now I will say this, I doubt very seriously if she's convicted that she can maintain her status as a judge no matter what, because she'll probably lose her bar license too.
We also got a comment, by the way, on the YouTube kind of relating to this.
Yeah.
It says, why won't Congress impeach these judges? They take a vow to uphold the Constitution. They are not doing that. Instead, claim President Trump is the one not upholding the Constitution. Impeach now.
Congress cannot impeach a state judge. That would be for their state laws, state legislatures to take care of. If it's a federal district court judge, you can't impeach them for simply ruling a way you don't like. You have to prove that they. The term is they're appointed for life for good cause. The good cause has to be something that proves that they were conducting an impeachable offense, which is going to be high crimes and misdemeanors. So basically what I'm trying to say is there's a due process piece. It does not mean you can't call them out. It does not mean you can't say that was jacked up. And it also does not mean you can't appeal it. So if they are taking bribes to render these decisions, if they are not recusing when they should have, and it's real obvious because you can look at their outside life, then I say yes, file a complaint. But at the same time, the Trump administration is doing a really, really good job of doing exactly what the system is designed to do and appealing these ridiculous orders at the federal court level.
But the left is trying to make this Hannah Dugan thing to be like, we just don't like her ruling. Trying to make it like how we react.
What ruling?
Exactly. Like with Boasberg, it was like, okay, well, that's inconvenient, but we'll beat him, in the Supreme Court, and we'll do it the right way. But this is not that. This is her actively hiding an illegal alien from ICE. Like, there's no saying, we just don't like that judge and their ruling. They broke the law. Like, I don't get where you have no ground to argue for that.
Yeah, she's not been charged with criminally ruling the wrong way.
No,
she's been charged with 2 counts of, quote, obstructing and impeding a proceeding before a department or agency of the United States and concealing an individual to prevent his discovery and arrest. She's basically harboring.
Yeah, which like 15 years ago, if that were to happen, it would be common sense on everybody, both sides of the aisle, to be like, yeah, the judge shouldn't be doing that. But now the left has gone so berserk that they're defending this judge for doing that. It's like, are you thinking? Do you realize what they did?
I will say this, though. I don't feel like they're defending her really, really hard.
Yes.
I mean, there's some man on the street kind of stuff. and there's a little bit of the what I would call the more radical members of the media and elected officials. But this is not like a a well-concerted effort. The most that Schumer could say about it today was it was a clown show. Arresting her was part of a clown show. That's all you got? So unless I'm missing something, I don't think they're really trying real hard because they realize this is hard to defend. Yeah. Hugh from Huntsville says, do the bar associations have outsized influences on who it gets nominated for judgeships? No, they don't. I'm not saying that the bar association doesn't at some point weigh in, but for the most part, the bar associations do not weigh into races. You will see you will see the bar association get involved in legislative races, giving money to governor's candidates, and probably sometimes giving money to judicial candidates. But for the most part, the bar associations don't get out there and advocate for their members of the bench, in my experience anyway. Barry from Athens says the Arizona judge who was harboring the illegal might have just thought the guy was cute. After all, the judge was a Democrat. That's possible. I don't know. He was living in his pool house. The whole thing is rather suspicious. John from Huntsville says, Phil, you are very knowledgeable. You are one very knowledgeable dude. Well, thank you. I don't know what I said that made you feel that way, but thank you very much. All right, we're gonna switch gears here after the break. We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about some political kabuki theater. Now, what you're seeing from Democrats right now, y'all, go ahead and use this phrase. If you haven't ever used it before, just grab it right now, kabuki theater. What is that? Well, there's an old phrase about, man, that's nothing but a bunch of kabuki theater. Well, there's an actual traditional form of Japanese theater known as kabuki, but it's known because it has elaborate costumes, dynamic acting, stylized performances, exaggerated movements and gestures. It's like over the top, right? So when you see Democrats right now trying to oppose Trump, what you're watching is a whole bunch of political kabuki theater. That's where we are. And it is a hoot to watch. I got examples and I got sound bites. In other words, I'm bringing receipts. You guys stay tuned. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Man, covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I am talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to the loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border to what we once again get to call Fort Benning. And then, oh, by the way, big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. All right, so we're going to jump back into this topic. Kabuki theater. You ever heard that term, by the way, kabuki theater?
I can't say I have.
Well, now you have. Use it. Use it widely. Use it often.
And you get the credit for that.
I do not. I will be the first to say that plagiarism is the highest form of flattery. I have no idea from whom I am plagiarizing that, but I am not the first to use it. But kabuki theater is so apropos when it comes to describing the Democrats. So, you know, Bernie Sanders himself is on the screen right now in my studio saying that Democrats lack a vision for the future. You know what their vision for the future is? Stop Trump. That's their whole vision for the future. They have nothing. They have no messaging. They have no means of conveying their message. They are struggling for leadership. Right now, the real leadership apparently is watching as Hakeem Jeffries and Spartacus Cory Booker beclown themselves once again by sitting on the steps of the Capitol. By the way, if you see any video of this, I said it on somebody else's like Twitter feed or something this morning. Cory Booker is giving his greatest wide-eyed, animated kabuki theater Spartacus speech, and there's a lady sitting behind him wearing rabbit ears for reasons I cannot even imagine. What did the rabbit ears have to do with the anti-Trump sit-in protest by members of Congress? I don't know. But listen, that's where we are. Kabuki theater, a form of classical theater in Japan known for its elaborate costumes and overly dramatized dynamic acting. That's the Democrats in a nutshell. Schumer actually slipped up. I got a piece here from Town Hall. Schumer actually slipped up and said, let his inside words be his outside words. Piece of Town Hall I hold in my calloused former paratrooper hands. He said Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer floating the idea of impeachment, accusing President Donald Trump of violating the rule of law. Despite Trump just being in office, Democrats seem unwilling to let go of their long-standing obsession with targeting him. It's just, you know, he's got nothing. So on Sunday, he was doing CNN's State of the Union. Schumer said he would consider articles of impeachment against Trump if Democrats took control of the Congress. So what he didn't say was, here's what Democrats would be doing for the nation. Here's where we'd be going with the economy. Here's what we would do for national defense. Here's what we would do for the southern border or for energy or anything else. He just said, listen, if you'll put us back in office, we will definitely consider articles of impeachment against Trump. Y'all, we cannot lose those midterms because that's what it'll be the last 2 years. I'm telling you, when Trump got elected, I said, we don't have 4 years, we have a guaranteed 2. We cannot lose the midterms or all we'll have is 2. And it'll be all Nancy Pelosi's, goat rodeo all over again. So, kabuki theater, what are you looking at? Well, they can say anything they want to, apparently. Remember insurrection? Remember January 6th? Calls for violence. It's all you care about, you Republicans. We are going to make sure that we root out extremism in our society. We're going to be looking for white extremists everywhere. We're going to be looking for people who actually pray in front of, abortion clinics. I've got an audio clip I'm going to call up if you don't mind, please. Which one do I want first, JP? Let me call up Representative Frederica Jones. This is audio clip number 2. Representative Frederica Jones. Now, first of all, if you've ever seen Frederica Jones, she looks like she's auditioning for some kind of Buffalo Bill Wild West rodeo show. She always wears a cowboy hat to match her overly stylized drag queen dress, and she's a hoot.
In this clip, she's wearing all pink with a pink cowboy hat.
Pink cowboy hat, which is, by the way, whoever made her dress also made her hat.
Yep.
So there's that. This is her calling for threats and uprisings about illegal immigration ending against the Trump administration. Go for it.
I've been giving out the phone numbers to the House of Representatives and to the Senate. It's one number. That number you call and you threaten it. And you say, this is wrong. This is not America. This is not what we stand for. We need a change. You have to do that. It's going to take the people. I've talked myself into oblivion. We need the people. We need an uprising where people are taking to the streets and the phones and writing letters. That's what we need.
You call that number and you threaten it. Threaten it. What? First of all, how do these people keep getting elected? Every once in a while, I'd saw somebody in Montgomery, and I'd think, "How did you get elected?" I mean, I'm just embarrassed that I'm in the same group. But then I watched these. She's in Congress, for crying out loud, wearing her goofy cowboy hats everywhere she goes. By the way, that was the most lame press conference I've ever seen.
Yeah.
She has a podium next to the highway.
I was about to say, the background noise was about as, I would say I was missing on a bunch of information if she was saying something substantial. But
and it looks like the cars, they just parked on the side of the road and did a press conference.
Yeah.
And there's nobody there.
I looked, Frederica Wilson is from Miami, is where she represents. So it seems like all these people are from the bigger cities where, unfortunately, their constituents vote these people in, and they get what they vote for.
Are you looking at how many terms has she served? How long has she been there? Frederica Jones, with her cowboy hats.
I'm not saying in Congress from 2011 through present.
Okay,
so since 2011.
So she's been there for 14 years. That's 7 terms. Seven times she's been elected to Congress.
Yeah,
7 times.
Actually, 2013 is when she went to the House. Yeah, so 2013 to now is what she's been there.
Still, that's 6.
Yeah,
that's 12 years. All right, so Frederica Jones is okay with. If any Republican had said that, by the way, if any Republican had pulled over on the side of the road, pulled their podium out of the back trunk of their car, and called the press and filmed. By the way, that was like it was filmed on somebody's phone.
Yep.
and said, what you need to do is call that number and threaten it, and then we need some uprising in the streets. Wow.
Who was it? I think it may have been Cory Booker or Schumer said, we're going to fight this in the streets. We're going to fight Trump in the streets.
I think I've got that article, as a matter of fact.
What?
Well, let's go one step further, because the one that really gets me is, now Frederica Jones is part of the clown show, all right? She's definitely kabuki theater. And then you have some you look at and go, all right, you should know better. You actually are there's supposed to be more to you than that. So now he's a freaking liberal, all right? But Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is Illinois' governor, is considered to be, he's a billionaire, first of all, a successful businessman. Some say he sort of bought his way into the governorship, but whatever the case, he's the governor of Illinois. If you can survive Illinois, Chicago-style politics, and you're a billionaire, and you're a screaming liberal, there's something else going on behind the scenes. That being said, he gave a speech. He's widely considered to be one of the potential front runners for a Democrat nomination to the presidency in the next go-round. Here's his speech at a recent New Hampshire fundraiser. That's interesting. He flew to New Hampshire to be a featured speaker at a Democrat rally. Play it.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box.
That's all they've got. There's nothing in there about policy. There was nothing in there about agenda items. There was nothing in there about the betterment of society or the improvement of the U.S. on the world stage. There was nothing in there about what it is they want to do differently. It was just, we've got to stop Republicans. And in his words, I mean, listen, if a Republican gave that speech, they would be forming a brand new January 6th commission and having them censured on the floor of the House or Senate, whoever it was that get the Senate. But a Democrat gives that speech, and it's widely known that he's a future candidate for governor, for president. And the crowd goes wild, and all they can do is go, wow, that just happened. And then Hakeem Jeffries, he and Cory Booker doing a ridiculous sit-in. I've got a piece here from Red State, Dateline today. Hakeem Jeffries invokes Civil War rhetoric and suggests that the Republicans are the party of traitors. Well, last I checked, we didn't open up the borders. Last I checked, we didn't have a blank checkbook to write endless checks to Ukraine. Last I checked, we weren't the ones who shut down the U.S. economy and told people they couldn't go to church. Last I checked, it was the Democrats who did all that. And oh, by the way, it was the Republicans who freed the slaves. Just saying.
I was just about to say that. I was like, he calls the Republican Party the party of traitors.
It's gotten to the point that I'm reading your thoughts. So yeah, Jeffries is doing a sit-in right now with Cory Booker. And he basically, they wanted it to look like, a sit-in from the civil rights era, I guess. But he said when he was giving his speech, he said that he's trying to put principles over parties, and it triggers him to remember an old quote from President Ulysses Grant at the onset of the Civil War. He said, it reminds me of a letter Ulysses Grant was said to have sent at the start of the Civil War at the moment of great turmoil. The country literally tearing itself apart, he said. What Grant said is there are but two parties in America right now, patriots and traitors. Okay, I got news. If anything, you might want to consider which one you are, Hakeem, as you sit on the steps of the Capitol, singing songs and clapping hands and making a spectacle of yourself in a non-efficient, completely unrealistic manner.
What did they sit out there for 10 hours, I saw?
Something like that.
It's like that, and then Cory Booker doing the 25, 26-hour filibuster. That's all they got, is trying to get headlines of, I did absolutely nothing and wasted everybody's time for 10 hours, 25 hours. Like, that's all it was. Like, I just don't. It's the longer they can spout nonsense is what they're trying to do.
By the way, you'll like this. Yes to all that. The protest began shortly after 6 a.m., where the two actors, the article says, Booker and Hakeem Jeffries, began live streaming their conversation on how awful Republicans are. Booker claimed it was a moment of moral urgency because he's always got that super dramatic tone. Yeah. And then what's funny is it says later down in the article, several other Democrats joined Booker and Jeffries throughout the day. Chris Coons, Angela Alsobrooks, Representative Andre Carson. What that basically means is a few of them showed up, hung out for a few minutes, and said, we're out of here.
Yeah. They couldn't even take that for that long.
No. They were like, okay, yeah, I love you and all that, but I got real things to do. So if y'all will just excuse me, I'm going to step away. Especially with y'all beginning to sing songs and the lady in the bunny ears, I really don't want to be in the picture.
Yeah. That seemed like my kind of party.
All right. Take me to a break, JP. Take the last break of the day here on a Meatloaf Monday. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right, last few minutes here with us on a Meatloaf Monday, but don't worry, we got a whole week full of stuff. I'll get some text messages here momentarily. And I will say this. In my text lines right now, I see that our two of our ardent liberal progressive Democrats are checking in. And I'm glad, because you know what that means? They're listening to the show.
Exactly. They've stuck around.
There is a cure for what ails you. It's called listening to Rightside Radio.
Yeah. Maybe if they listen long enough, they'll have an epiphany.
Just, come on back around. We'd love to have you. Who are they? Shag Nasty the Atheist. Shag Nasty says progressive policy is very clear. No fascists, no billionaires, pro-Ukraine, pro-choice, pro-diversity, pro-vaccine, pro-science. Dems can get on board or never win again. I'm not sure if you recall that J.B. Pritzker is a billionaire. Mark Cuban is a billionaire. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, both billionaires. Oh, by the way, what's his name that started Apple and Microsoft?
Tim Cook.
Tim Cook, thank you. And then Microsoft.
Bill Gates.
Billionaires. And they're extremely... Oh, by the way, George Soros. Did I mention George Soros?
No, you had not. But that is the oligarch of all oligarchs.
Listen, if you want to see oligarch in the dictionary, you're going to find his picture right next to it. So Shag, come on, man. At least if you're going to put out a tweet like that, make sure it's grounded. So, no fascist. Do you know what a fascist is? Well, a fascist is what you just described.
Also, Bernie Sanders' net worth is like $5 million, which is pretty high considering somebody who is fighting against the oligarchs.
As he flies on private jets to his anti-oligarchy rallies.
To talk about climate change.
And then what does Shag Nasty say? By the way, Shag's smiling. He sends me a smiley emoji. He says, get all them too. What does that mean, get all them too? Oh, Dems can get on board or never win again.
I guess he's talking about the people you mentioned are bad too. So,
okay. Shag. Come on. We still love you. Yellow Dog Mike, though. Let's see what he's got now. He's usually pretty ardent. Shag Nasty is actually kind of fun sometimes, but Yellow Dog, let's see what you got. He says, hey, Phil, I want to know where I could get that $1.98 gas that Trump talked about. Need to go to the grocery store to get more Fruit Loops. The military hates Pomade Pete. I'd love to see him polygraph an admiral. I can always count on Yellow Dog to take 6 or 7 different topics and cram them into one text.
It's like he's only got 30 seconds. He can only type out one text.
Sometimes the way it comes out, I'm pretty sure it's voice text too.
Yeah, it's sometimes I wonder if it's comedic, but then it's not. I don't think it is.
And by the way, Yellow Dog, Fruit Loops, really? That's where you're going? We all know it's Captain Crunch, man. Captain Crunch all the way. Crunch Berries.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch is the best. That's the best one.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch will mess up the milk, though. It'll just mess up the milk.
Why? You got too much cinnamon in it? Is that what you're saying?
It's really good eating dry.
Yeah, that's true, too.
It's a good snack.
It's great, yeah.
We're going to get all into my business right now. Okay. Mark from Red Bay says, the woman in the bunny ears is Biden's Easter Bunny handler. It might be. Who knows? Jeff from Indiana checking in again by text says, hey, Phil, 4 out of the last 11 Illinois governors have gone to prison. Not a very good tracker. He might want to watch his P's and Q's. Yeah. Just listen. But Alabama can't say much more. So
yeah.
Kenneth from Somerville says, I thought I was going to get to hear Bert during that press conference. You know what? That would have been fitting. Bring in the A-10s on a gun run.
It sounded like we heard it one time. That truck passed by. It sounded like it.
It did sound like it, didn't it? John from Harvest says Democrats need to be in a nut house, not a nutshell. No. Okay. I think I said in a nutshell at some point. He said, no, you should have said the nut house. I get it. I get it all the way. All right, listen, here's the bottom line. Kabuki theater, that's what you're seeing. If you want to support the Democrat Party, that is certainly your choice. I disagree with it. But right now, you got to tell me what it is you're supporting. Because right now, all they are saying and supporting is no Trump, Trump bad. No Trump, Trump bad. There's got to be more to life. You need policy, you need principles. And we don't see either one. All we see is kabuki theater. And it's ridiculous. And singing songs while you sit for 10 hours on the steps, live streaming yourself next to a lady in red bunny ears, or wear your magic cowboy hat and do a call for violence on the side of the road somewhere in Florida. It's just not cutting it. They have no leadership, no agenda, no principles. And I was telling you, it needs to happen soon, or the Democrat Party is going to dissolve, implode maybe. All right, you guys, that's Meatloaf Monday. And by the way, do not forget, there's always more of us than there are of them. God is still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.